Everyone loves the ladybug. It's the only insect that a child will let crawl onto their hand without screaming. It appears in fairy tales, in logos, in good luck drawings. People blow on it and make a wish. But there's one detail almost nobody knows. That little red thing with black spots that seems so cute to you is one of the most efficient killing machines that exists at its scale. Let's crunch some numbers. A lion succeeds in 1 out of every 4 hunts. A great white shark about half. The ladybug doesn't chase gazelles, but in its world, the world of leaves and stems, it's an exterminator. A single one can devour 50 prey a day, and over its lifetime, it wipes out around 5,000. If it were the size of a lion, it would be the most feared animal on the planet. It weighs less than a drop of water. It fits on your pinky fingernail. And it has been killing relentlessly since long before the first human being existed. Today we're going to see who the ladybug really is, why nature painted it in such striking color, how it raises larvae that look like tiny monsters, and what would happen to your food if all of them disappeared tomorrow morning. Let's start at the beginning, because the ladybug is much older than it seems. It belongs to the order of Coleoptera, the beetles, one of the most successful groups of animals to have walked the earth. To give you an idea, out of every 4 known animal species, 1 is a beetle. Their ancestors were already scurrying among the ferns hundreds of millions of years ago, when dinosaurs hadn't even appeared yet. Ladybugs as such, that family scientists call Coccinellidae, emerged later, but their lineage sinks its roots into a past so remote it's hard to imagine. Today, about 6,000 species of ladybugs are known, spread across almost the entire planet. They're found in the fields of Europe, in the jungles of the Americas, in deserts and mountains. They live on every continent except Antarctica, and not all of them are red with spots. There are yellow, orange, black ones with red spots, and even some gray ones without any spots. The most famous model, the 7-spot ladybird, is just one among thousands. And here's the first fact that shatters a myth. Many people believe that the spots indicate the ladybug's age, that it grows a new one each year. That's a lie. The number of spots depends on the species, not on how many years it has. A ladybug is born with all its spots and dies with the same ones. I grew up believing the age thing, like almost everyone, and I admit that when I first read it, I felt a little cheated. Now comes the really interesting part. The ladybug's entire body is a set of tools honed for a single mission: to hunt and not be hunted. Let's start with the most obvious thing. That intense red color. That red isn't decoration. It's a warning. In nature, red and black together almost always mean the same thing. Careful, I'm toxic, don't eat me. Biologists call it aposematic coloration. The ladybug is shouting to the whole world that tasting it is a bad idea. And it's not bluffing, because when a bird catches it, the ladybug does something straight out of a movie. It releases from its leg joints a yellow, foul-smelling liquid packed with bitter, toxic substances. It's called reflex bleeding. It's literally blood that it deliberately squirts out through its knees. The bird tastes the horrible flavor, spits out the ladybug, and learns the lesson for the rest of its life. The next time it sees that red color with black spots, it won't even go near it. The ladybug has taught it to respect it without dying in the process. There are species whose liquid is so potent that a single drop is enough for a predator to remember it for months. And here's the elegant part of the system. The color and the poison work together. The color is the sign, the poison is the punishment. Separately, they'd be of little use. Together, they form one of the most effective defenses in the animal kingdom. Let's move on to the wings, because they hide a trick few people know. The ladybug has 4 wings, but only 2 are used for flying. The top 2, the red ones with spots, are hard as a shell. They're called elytra and function as armor. Beneath them, folded like an impossible piece of origami, are the true flight wings, thin and transparent. When the ladybug wants to take off, it lifts the red shell, unfolds the hidden wings, and launches into the air. And when it lands, it refolds and hides them under the armor in less than a second. Engineers who design folding robots have been studying for years exactly how it tucks such large wings into such a small space without breaking them. A beetle the size of a pea solved an engineering problem that we still struggle to copy, and the jaws. Small, hidden, but relentless. The ladybug has no venom for its prey, nor a tongue that shoots out like other insects. What it has is patience and jaws that chew non-stop. It walks along the stem, finds its victim, and simply eats it alive, starting with the soft body. There's no drama, no spectacular chase. There's methodical, constant work that doesn't stop until the leaf is clean. And who is that victim? This brings us to the ladybug's great enemy, its favorite prey, the aphid. If you've never heard of aphids, let me introduce you because they're the real villains of this story. The aphid is a tiny insect, smaller than a pinhead, that attaches itself to stems and leaves and sucks the sap from plants like a silent vampire. On its own, it doesn't seem like much. The problem is its reproductive method, which borders on madness. A female aphid can produce offspring without a male, and those offspring are born already pregnant with the next generation. It's like a Russian doll of descendants. Within weeks, a single female can turn into a cloud of thousands. Scientists calculated that if nothing stopped them, the offspring of a single aphid in one season would form a mass of insects impossible to measure. Plants swither, crops are ruined, gardens dry up, and who stops them? The ladybug. It and its larvae are the wall that prevents the aphid army from destroying everything. That's why, where there are ladybugs, plants can breathe. But the pretty red adult is only half the story. Because before being that charming little spot next to a flower, the ladybug was something completely different. And that something else is, frankly, a nightmare in miniature. It all starts when the female lays her eggs, and she's very clever about it. She places them right next to an aphid colony on the underside of a leaf, so her children are born surrounded by food. It's like leaving a newborn baby inside a fully stocked pantry. From those tiny yellow oval eggs, the larva emerges. And the larva looks nothing like the ladybug you know. Forget the red. Forget the spots and the cuteness. The larva is elongated, dark, with orange markings and a body covered in small spines. It looks like a miniature crocodile or a dragon the size of a grain of rice. The first time I saw one up close on a rosebush leaf, I swear I didn't recognize it. I thought it was a pest. I had to look it up to believe that this threatening creature would turn into the ladybug of fairy tales, and that larva has only one goal in life: to eat. It devours aphids relentlessly, one after another, at an even faster rate than the adults. A single larva can wipe out several hundred aphids before growing up. It moves along the stem like a hungry predator, grabs its prey with its front legs and chews it whole. Wherever it passes, nothing remains alive. And here's a detail that left me cold when I discovered it. When aphids become scarce, the larva doesn't just wait around to starve. It eats its own siblings. If it finds an unhatched ladybug egg or a weaker larva, it eats it without a second thought. Cannibalism is common among them. The cutest little thing in your garden begins life as a monster that devours its own family to survive. Nature isn't tender, it only seems that way from a distance. The larva grows, molts several times, and when it's nice and fat from so many aphids, it attaches itself to a leaf and transforms. It becomes a pupa, a kind of immobile capsule stuck to the plant. Inside that capsule, magic happens. The body of the little dragon almost completely disintegrates and reorganizes itself from scratch. Days later, the capsule opens and the adult ladybug emerges. But be careful, it doesn't come out red spots already. It comes out pale, soft, almost yellowish, completely defenseless. For several hours, it cannot fly or protect itself. Its shell hasn't hardened yet nor taken on color. It's the most vulnerable moment of its entire life. Any ant, any spider, any bird could kill it in a second. Little by little, as the shell dries, the red appears and the black spots are drawn. Only then, armed with its warning color and its poison, does the ladybug launch into the world to repeat the cycle. Subscribe if you liked the video. What's coming now is the part that connects this little beetle directly to your dinner plate, and it's more important than you imagine. The relationship between the ladybug and humans is old and deep, and almost everything revolves around one thing: pest control. For thousands of years, farmers watched aphids destroy their crops without really knowing what to do, and without realizing it, their best ally was always there, walking on the leaves. But there's one specific, real, documented story that turned the ladybug into a legend of agriculture. In the late 19th century in California, orange and lemon trees were dying. An invasive pest, an insect that attached itself to branches forming a white crust, was devastating the entire citrus industry. Farmers tried everything: poisons, fire, chemicals, nothing worked. Plantations dried up one after another, and thousands of families were on the verge of ruin. Then someone had an idea that seemed crazy. If that pest came from Australia, wasn't there some animal there that naturally ate it? They sent a researcher to the other side of the world to look for the pest's enemy, and he found it: a small Australian ladybug that fed precisely on that insect. They brought a few, just a handful, and released them among the diseased orange trees. What happened next reads like a fairy tale. The ladybugs reproduced, attacked the pest, and in just a couple of years, they saved California's entire citrus industry. A handful of beetle-sized lentils achieved what no poison had. That changed the history of agriculture forever. It was one of the first times humans used a live animal to combat a pest instead of chemicals. Today we call it biological control, and it started largely with a ladybug. Since then, ladybugs have been bred and sold in bulk. There are greenhouses and organic farms that buy thousands of them and release them among the crops to devour aphids without needing pesticides. It's cheaper, doesn't poison the land, and leaves no residue on what you later eat. Every organic tomato, every chemical-free lettuce, owes something to this little hunter. But, and here the story takes an unexpected turn. Not everything surrounding ladybugs is pretty, because sometimes trying to help, we put our foot in it. In some countries, ladybugs from other parts of the world were imported, larger, more voracious species to reinforce pest control. One of them, an Asian ladybug species, yes, but then it didn't stop. It began to displace native ladybugs, eat their larvae, and take their place. In some regions, longtime native species started disappearing, pushed out by the newcomer. And as if that weren't enough, this same invasive species has the habit of entering houses when cold weather arrives. They sneak in by the thousands into walls, windows, and attics, looking for a warm place to spend the winter. People who thought they were a symbol of good luck suddenly found themselves with ladybug infestations inside their homes. An uncomfortable reminder that when we move animals from one place to another, the consequences are almost never what we expect. And this connects to a question I find fascinating. What would happen if all ladybugs suddenly disappeared tomorrow morning? At first, nothing. You wouldn't notice anything strange. Days would pass and the world would go on as usual. But underneath, on the leaves and stems no one looks at, a disaster would begin to brew. Without ladybugs to stop them, aphids would multiply out of control. Remember, a single female can generate thousands of descendants in weeks. In the first spring without ladybugs, plants would start to become covered in those clouds of sucking aphids. Leaves would curl, shoots would wither, flowers wouldn't get to open. Then the harvests would suffer. Many crops that are now naturally protected would start to be damaged. Farmers would have to resort to more and more pesticides to compensate for the absence of the hunter. And here's where things get complicated, because those pesticides don't just kill aphids. They also poison bees, fish, birds, and the soil itself. To fill the gap left by a harmless animal, we would have to poison half the countryside. But there's more. Aphids don't act alone. They produce a sweet, sticky substance that attracts fungi and other insects. Without ladybugs, diseased plants would become covered in mold. And the many animals that feed on ladybugs and their larvae, other insects, some small birds, would lose part of their food supply and would have to look elsewhere, further upsetting the balance. It wouldn't be an overnight apocalypse. It would be a slow, silent shift, a crack that widens season after season. What biologists call a cascade effect. You remove one small piece that seemed not to matter, and suddenly you discover that it was supporting much more than you thought. The ladybug is that unremarkable brick in the foundation of the building. No one looks at it, but remove it and see what happens. And before we finish, we have to talk about something no other insect has: people's affection. Because the ladybug holds a unique place in human culture, and that too has its explanation. In the Middle Ages, European farmers watched these little red beetles clean their crops of pests just when they needed them most. They didn't understand biological control or aphids, so they interpreted it as a gift from heaven. In many languages, the name of the ladybug is linked to the sacred. In English, it's called Our Lady's beetle, in reference to the Virgin Mary, to whom they attributed the miracle of the saved harvests. The 7 spots of the most common ladybug were associated with the 7 joys and 7 sorrows of religious tradition. In Latin America, they love it under other names. In Argentina, they call it San Antonio's little cow. In Mexico, Catarina. In Spain, Mariquita, Little Mary. And almost everywhere, it shares the same fame: it brings good luck. Some say that if a ladybug lands on your hand, you shouldn't shoo it away, but wait for it to fly off on its own, because it carries away misfortunes. Children across half the world grow up reciting rhymes to ladybugs, asking them to fly to the sky and bring good fortune. Think about it for a moment. The same animal that begins its life as a cannibalistic dragon, that shoots toxic blood from its legs, and that kills 5,000 prey over its lifetime, is also an insect that awakens the most affection in humans. The most beloved predator on the planet. There are few creatures that combine these two extremes at the same time, and perhaps that's the real lesson. The ladybug teaches us that appearances are deceiving, that behind something small and beautiful can hide a story of fierce survival, of chemistry, engineering, and millions of years of evolution refining every detail. That the animal we adorn in children's stories is, in its world, one of the most relentless hunters that exist. The next time you see a ladybug land on a leaf, don't just think about luck or fairy tales. You're looking at an armored beetle with deployable armor, chemical defense, and an appetite that keeps entire armies of pests at bay. An animal that was here long before us, that sustains crops we depend on every day, and that, in all likelihood, will still be here long after we're gone. And if you're lucky enough to have one crawl onto your hand, let it fly away on its own. After all, it's too busy saving the world in its own way. Subscribe if you liked the video. Every week, we delve into the world of the little creatures that almost no one looks at twice, but that hold everything together. See you in the next one.